Welcome to Talking Technology with NCBI Labs, where we believe that technology is the single greatest enabler for people with sight loss and all disabilities. If you are interested in the latest technology news, products, and innovations, then you've come to the right place.
Hello everybody, you're very welcome along to the NCBI Talking Technology, episode 16, and today we have got a great show lined up for you. First of all, we explore the rise in the popular free open source screen reader NVDA from NV Access, and from its beginning in 2006, NVDA is now used in over 120 countries, has been translated into more than 50 languages, and telling us all about the original inspiration behind NVDA and latest updates, we are going to be welcoming back Quentin Christianson, Training and Support Manager with NV Access, in a short while. And also today, our conversation goes out of this world as we find out about recent developments in accessible astronomy for people with sight loss. Researchers Christopher Harrison from Newcastle University in the UK and Noel Storr from Groningen University join us on the show to tell us all about the pioneering work they are doing in this field. So for today's panel, we've got our regular panelists, JP Corcoran and Joe Lonergan, myself, Daniel Dunn, who's speaking with you at the moment, and we also welcome a new panelist, David Redmond. You might have heard David on our show before, so we're very delighted to welcome David onto our panel. And as mentioned earlier, our guests will be coming along shortly to speak. And if you want to get in touch with today's show, please do drop us an email to labs@ncbi.ie. That's labs@ncbi.ie, or alternatively, we have the questions and answers panel open here on the Microsoft Teams if you are listening in live, where you can drop in any questions or comments that you want to send to our panelists or our guests today. So first up, I'm going to welcome you to Jake Noel Storr, and we're going to welcome Christopher Harrison for the developments in accessible astronomy. And it's quite an interesting topic, accessible astronomy. So I'm going to maybe start off with some questions for Jake, if you want to unmute her, Jake.
Yeah. Here I am.
Great. It's great. This is the nervous moment of the show when we wonder, can our guests unmute? Sometimes we do get technical issues, but great to hear your voice, and you're very welcome to the show. So in the Q&A paper on Nature Astronomy, what were the main findings that inform your own work, and what impact, I suppose, should this have on astronomy in the field?
So I think so our Q&A paper was based on a workshop organized in part by Chris, who will talk to you in a bit, and other people. And in that we had Q&A sessions with blind or visually impaired astronomers. And there we really, I think the highlight for me a lot was both in terms of what the needs are of blind and visually impaired astronomers, but also how we share that. But also, I think underlying that, the fact that when people are looking at images from the universe, almost all of them are also not actually what people see. So things like we launched the James Webb Space Telescope into space. It makes pictures of the universe, which then we interpret, but the way that we present those as images could equally be as well with sound. And I know that some of the early release images from there have already been turned into sonifications, and you can find them in places like Astronomy Picture of the Day.
Yes.
In terms of listening to that. And also we used telescopes that collect photons in everything from the X-ray region of the spectrum to the radio region of the spectrum. And when we put that down as an image or put it in a paper, it's not what people see. So why not should we also interpret that in different ways, present that in different ways? So I think that's the importance there. And I think the importance for astronomy and astronomers is also using that in both ways, not only to make it more accessible, but also to explain to people how that difference is in place, that you don't see these when people are looking at these images. It's not what you can actually see with your eyes if you are a sighted person. So why not convert it into other mediums of communicating that information also? So I think that's very important for us, both inside astronomy and also externally.
Excellent. So it kind of gives us different methods of interpreting the same data.
Yeah.
Brilliant. And I suppose, how can sonifications and indeed tactile models, help everyone to learn or even appreciate astronomy? So,
well, I think that becomes very true, and we, as well as having the sonifications, we have tactile models, and for a lot of people, the way that you learn or the way that you receive information comes in different ways, and it doesn't matter about your visual status or your hearing status, but these ways can give you different ways to access that data. We know from a project with tactile models that one of my master's students did that even sighted students can learn a lot from the tactile models, because it gives you that different view and a different appreciation of if we make a plot on a computer screen of a 3-dimensional graph, you're actually looking at it in 2 dimensions. So if you plot that as a tactile model, you're actually making it what you're actually talking about. So I think there you're expanding those horizons. And then with sound, you can pick out a lot of different things with sound. Even for sighted people, seeing what you can hear is also giving you that extra dimension in terms of what you could add to the image, what you could find out from those data that you might not have noticed if it was just presented to you on a screen again. So it broadens it for everybody in terms of those different ways of learning.
Absolutely. And Christopher, maybe if I could bring you in here. And so with Jake, you worked collectively on this together?
Yeah, hi. So thanks for having me. It's been great to be here. So yeah, I've been working with various people across the world on these sort of activities. So one project that I'm working on is called Audio Universe, and we've been creating a range of resources like the ones that Jake's been describing that allow people to explore astronomy using different ways, particularly with sound. So one example is that we created a show called Audio Universe Tour of the Solar System, where all of the objects and concepts are represented with sound. And unlike most shows, we created the soundtrack first. We worked with children who have sight loss and their teachers to make sure every concept and everything in the show could be fully understood with the sounds alone. And then we added the visuals on at the end. And so you can get that kind of multimodal experience, but you don't need the visuals to fully understand and appreciate the show.
I suppose just listening to you to describe that, it would be kind of a reverse nearly of how media is made today. Like the pictures are recorded and sound effects and things are added in later. So
that's true,
yeah, so you've kind of reversed on that. You started with the audio and then added the visuals in at the end.
That's right. And often the audio tracks to these shows about astronomy, they don't really add much value, in my opinion. They're sort of spacey sounds or maybe some music, but you can use the soundtrack a lot more to really add value and to add learning. And as Jake was alluding to, it's not just people with sight loss that benefit from this. When we've taken this into schools, we found that all the children and the teachers are delighted to have this other way to experience space and astronomy rather than just looking at pictures all the time.
Excellent. Sounds very exciting, and I suppose I can appreciate working with children of school-going age as well. How new takes on learning are all really appreciated by the children. It's more than just images on paper. It's on digital. It's sound is coming into it. The more multimedia, the more exciting we can make it for the children to learn.
Yeah, that's true. And actually, just this weekend, we were set up in a museum, and we had this cool new tool made by some of my colleagues from the European Southern Observatory, where the kids could interact with the image with sound. So we set up a webcam. The webcam tracks where their hand is, and you move your hand over the image, and you hear different sounds depending where your hand is in the image. So it's a really immersive and interactive way to explore and interact with astronomy, rather than looking at beautiful images, but usually it's fairly static.
Yes, yes.
And I have,
hi, Daniel. Can I come in there?
Yeah, sorry. Just Joe is one of our panelists here, and you have a question, Joe?
Hi, guys. Jake and Christopher. I was just wondering there. I'm a vision impaired parent, and I was wondering, could this be used, I suppose, to support learning? You know, to help vision impaired parent help a sighted child, or maybe use a tactile map to understand what they're, I suppose, learning as regards maybe the size of the earth, or tactile map of the universe, or something like that. Has that ever come into your thinking?
Yeah, absolutely. From our point of view, in terms of both the tactile models and the sonifications, that you as a visually impaired parent should certainly be able to have that same access with your kids that are learning. So, for example, our tactile models are based around, you know, you can do as much with touch as you can do with actually looking at the model or the underlying image that made the model. So there you should be able to learn that much. And I think sometimes, and also going on what Chris was saying, you can even get more out of it from the sound. Like, for example, if you're looking at the scale of the solar system, where you can have different sounds for the different planets as you move out through the solar system, and you have gaps in between, this I think becomes much more emphasized when the sound is connected to it, because the quietness between these big gaps between the planets is much more apparent in the audio than it is in the visual, because in the visual pictures you tend to see the next planet and the next planet and the next planet, and so you only get that impression of scale much more easily when it's converted into the sound. So I think it totally helps those back and forth both ways, and helps people communicate and interpret those things in different ways and together, because you can have that shared experience of what that is.
Exactly, that's what I mean. A shared experience. Sometimes you can be left out. It sounds really interesting.
Absolutely, absolutely. You know, it's great that we're hearing of this coming on stream. Has it been around long? You know, this kind of work that you're doing, or is it relatively recent?
I guess I can touch on that. So we recently, along with this Q&A article that Jake worked on, we published a review to try and see how long this has been going on and how many people have been doing it, particularly in the astronomy area. And we found there was 100 projects we identified of people and groups that had been trying to use sound to represent astronomy. Although they dated back down some to the 1960s, there's really not been very many until the last 15 years or so, where I'd say there's been a bit of an explosion of interest and activity in this. I think this goes hand in hand with our digital advances as well.
Yeah. So interesting to hear that there was up to 100 other pieces going on, and I suppose that's down to what you could uncover.
Yes, exactly. And I think it's really exciting, but one thing we might reflect on is why, if there are 100 projects, why is it not more common and not more well known, and why not more people using this? And I think we identified some of the challenges and limitations that sort of preventing this becoming more mainstream, and that's something that me and myself and Jake are working on to try and make this more mainstream and accessible.
And I had a bachelor student last year who just did her thesis project on this sort of classifying and categorization of these kind of things that were in the review articles, like Chris has written, to say what kind of things are used and how are they used. So I think one of the issues that we want to address is sort of consistency, or some way of explaining what in our way of turning the data into sound is the way that you're hearing it, because how you use pitch, how you use timbre, how you use volume can change by image to image to image, by group by group by group. So it's much harder then to interpret. If I see this image sonified, I see this image sonified, I have this image sonified, then how it was done can become important. And so I think looking for ways to make that consistent, or at least ways to explain what you're doing each time, is very important, so that it becomes more overall accessible. And then also we talked about the difference between because there are blind astronomy researchers who make sonifications or ordifications of their data, and that sort of falls in the same category. Sighted people, if they look at data that research astronomers look at, they also think that looks hideous as much as this sounds hideous. So, you know, there's a ton of people working at Space Telescope Science Institute, for example, who turn those images, those horrible data, into beautiful images that are put in magazines and newspapers. And we want some kind of strategy for the same way of how you're thinking about sonification, the same way that you've got this data that blind astronomers can listen to, compared to how you want to make a sonification, but how people can see the same thing or interpret what they're hearing each time to see what is in the image. Sorry, I use seeing and hearing synonymously in the tactile and audible and sight.
I suppose, and like to make it interesting and I suppose beautiful is the challenge that comes with that. Exactly.
Yeah, and I mean, there's been a lot of research historically in terms of printed images about whether you're keeping the truth of the data when you turn the actual data from the telescope into the press release image that you give out. Are you still keeping the same information there? And I think the same has to be true about what we do with sonifying those images, that the final sonification needs to be beautiful and lovely to listen to, but it also should respect the data that was put in and do it in some kind of way that you can explain to people, if not consistently, at least image by image, what you did with this to make it there in the sonification.
Excellent. And that kind of touches on my next question for you. So you've worked with deaf people and blind people. So how does it exactly then connect?
Yeah, I mean, that's also very tricky. So yeah, I had a lot of experience in the past working with deaf people, and so now working also with the sonifications, tactile models. But I think all of this goes to having as many ways as possible to be sharing the same information. So with tactile models, they're most accessible to also deaf people, blind people, everybody. Then we have the sonifications, obviously not accessible to the deaf people. We have descriptions of of things that is not accessible. And then also we do things like kinesthetic astronomy activities, where people are actually up and moving around and thinking about the universe together. And that helps, I think, everyone also, because you can then see what people are doing, or you can experience that without having to have the visual to have the hearing present. So I think you have this whole spectrum across the board of how you have to do things, and making everything as inclusive as possible, I think, is really important. And how you keep thinking about those things, but also, you know, everybody can access some things and not other things, but also everybody can, as a learner, appreciate better and worse that combination of things. So I think having the combination is very valuable for everybody.
Absolutely. Very, very interesting. So working on accessibility projects, what's the current, especially for the blind and visually impaired people, and what's currently happening at the moment?
Yeah, so I think there's a very active community, and in just a couple of months, in December, we're going to be holding a workshop in Leiden, where we're bringing together around 50 researchers in astronomy, sound perception, education, to talk about all of these ongoing projects and really think about what we can do to not just sort of work on our own in isolation, to make our own little tools, our own little things, but really to roll this out more widely and make it something that all schools can access for the children, all universities could access for research or for their students, and really take it to the next level. So there's many projects ongoing, but I think we need to work now to really ramp this up and roll it out. And that's what we hope to achieve, partly in this workshop that myself and Jake will be attending in December.
Lovely. Can you tell us a little bit about maybe 3D printing, or have you know, can people use 3D printers then from any of the projects you're on to print out relevant stuff?
Yeah, I mean, I do a lot of 3D printing type stuff and have for a while. There's an International Astronomical Union project called Inspiring Stars, and that has various 3D models that are attached to it. It's a traveling exhibit that moves around and supposedly gains things as it goes. And I even had the King of Netherlands came and held my tactile models during an event we had. So we're trying to make that as widespread as possible. But also I do have many students that are working on that 3D printing, and we have students who are now trying to make 3D print models that have different wavelengths also interpreted by different textures or something in the 3D print. So they're investigating how to do these multi-wavelengths, like a radio galaxy with the radio emission shown in one kind of texturing and the optical galaxy shown in another. So we're trying to expand on that all the time about how that works and how that goes.
Excellent.
Daniel, can I come in there?
Yeah.
I was wondering, Christopher and Jake, I wondering, did you ever think of expanding any of your ideas to other areas like maybe land or sea or things like that? Are you just specifically invested in astronomy?
So I think the bias comes that both myself and Jake, our background is in astronomy, and but most of what we're talking about here can apply across any topics, and we are connected with people who are interested in other areas of science and beyond, and we are talking to them. So these tools, these 3D models, indeed they can be used in other areas. We just have our own personal bias based on our interest in astronomy. Now, I just mentioned that if some of your listeners want to try and get some of these models for themselves, if you go to tactileuniverse.org, I know that they have some models you can download and 3D print yourself. And for listening, our website audiouniverse.org, you can go and have a listen to some of the things we've produced.
Great. We'll post some of those links on our platforms, and hopefully someone will tune in.
Yeah. I think a lot of the stuff as well that we do with sort of planets and how we interpret planet surfaces in terms of the 3D printing and things is very applicable to other fields as well, because we're learning there all the time, not only about how you're showing these differences in the planets, but also how different features are, how large they should be, what scale they should be, all of those different things. And in terms of how we're progressing, like how you can show different things in different ways. So I think even in biology, while you're trying to do that, or chemistry while you're trying to do that, the same sort of things apply. And from what we can learn in astronomy can also apply there when you're trying to show those differences or show different features in different ways and how that works best. So it's certainly valuable across the field.
Gentlemen, if I can come in with a quick question there, if you don't mind. David's my name. So basically my question is, you mentioned a lot about, sonification, for example, but do you ever use, in creating things like the audio universe, did you ever use the voice or voice acting in any way in developing that stuff to maybe describe stuff, or just as a guide maybe?
Yeah, actually, this is something that we realized early on was very important. So when we were trialing some of these example sonifications early on with some children, the feedback was, I have no idea what's going on. And so because it's just a weird way and that people are not used to, so the context of explaining with audio description is really important to explain the context of these sonifications. So in our show, we invested a lot of effort into making sure we very clearly explained what the listener was going to hear and what it meant. And I also have a colleague who's a blind astronomer in Spain, Enrique Perez Montero, and he's investing a lot of effort in providing audio description of some of the wonderful images that we see released. And rather than just a short alt text, a really long, meaningful description of what can be experienced from the image.
And is all that available? Sorry, is all that available then through Audio Universe, your website, or do you distribute some of that through things like YouTube and stuff as well?
Yeah, so the show that we made and the related things are on audiouniverse.org, also on YouTube. And I'm not sure if Enrique has yet released his things online, but I can certainly find out and email you to share those with your listeners.
That'd be awesome. Thank you.
And one thing we certainly find along those lines is that when people look at an image, they read the image caption underneath, and the same should apply for a sonification, that there needs to be an audio described sonification of it. But we're also, I know that Nature Astronomy, in which our articles are being published, the editor there responsible for this is also very interested in how to make all of their image captions more accessible, because people tend to write in their image caption about what you can see in the image, and then the alt text of the image also says what you can say in the image, because they just copy the caption there. So really trying to turn that around, so for researchers who are using those publications like Nature Astronomy to be able to use that in a screen reader and then have actually hopefully a sonified plot graph, whatever, if not, then to have an audio description that actually describes, like, this line does this line does this, to explain the important parts of it for people who cannot actually see it, as opposed to current captions and even alt text that requires you to actually have been able to see it before you could understand even what the alt text says about it.
Yeah.
And do you focus on the English language for now, or have you plans to translate the kind of designs that you're using or the descriptions that you're using within Audio Universe?
Yeah, so the show that we've made already, that's been translated into Italian, and a German version will be released soon, and there's a Spanish version. And so we're trying to work with our collaborators across the world. And most of the things that Enrique Perez Montero has done is in Spanish, because he's Spanish. So we are trying to build up this international community and get as many languages as we can. Often it's about resources and funding,
sure,
in terms of how far we can go.
And there it comes also to this is a different issue of the English dominance of all of these things anyway in the first place. So I think there's a big problem there in translation anyway before we even start looking at this as well. So I think it's going hand in hand actually in terms of a lot of the new things that are developed, that we should be doing it in all these languages. But again, if you get a grant anywhere in the world, it's difficult. And even here in the Netherlands, getting things in Dutch is difficult, because if we have EU grants for it, we have a project right now that's working with Germany, Netherlands and Denmark, but also our requirement is to make everything in English, which none of those three countries have as their first language, because that's the common language for the grant. But then getting everything translated and working in those three languages makes everything really complicated too.
So yeah, I suppose it adds to the workload. On top of
it's
it.
really that it adds to the cost grant load is the problem that we have.
I can appreciate that. And just, I suppose, is there any more questions in, or is there anything you would like to maybe add to that?
I think I just finished by saying how much I've appreciated how what we're doing, and I personally started with the accessibility motivation in terms of making astronomy more accessible to everybody. That's very important to me. But I've appreciated more and more how what we're doing just benefits everybody, all the way from school children right through to academic researchers of all levels of vision. And that's something that's really important to me. And that's a message I'm trying to sell to my sighted colleagues, that they should take this seriously, because they'll see the benefits for everybody.
Yes, that's a very poignant message to send out.
I totally agree with that. And as I'm on these accessibility, inclusion, equity committees in Europe and around the world, I think that's totally the message that we try to portray all the time, is that it's not about making astronomy particularly accessible for certain groups, but making astronomy for all, and it does benefit all when we do these things. And so it shouldn't be seen as we're doing this for blind and visually impaired people. It should be we're doing this for everybody, and it absolutely benefits blind and visually impaired people and does give them accessibility and inclusion, but also on the whole it makes this global pattern. And I think taking down those barriers is really important, and that everybody can benefit is really important.
I think so. It's very well said. So guys, listen, it's been absolutely wonderful speaking with you today. Being out of this world, so to speak, pardon the pun. You know, it's very interesting to hear about new developments and things like that happening, you know, especially on the accessibility front. And you know, more power to you guys going forward, and hopefully we'll bring you back on again sometime in the near future, and we'll do a little catch up and see how things are progressing in the intermediate time.
That'd be great.
It'll be a pleasure. Thank you very much for having us.
So thank you very much, Christopher, and thank you very much, Jay. So that's part one of our show for today. In the second part of our show today, we are going to be talking to NVDA. We have Quentin Christianson, who's the Training and Support Manager with NV Access, talking to us about the rise in popularity of the NVDA Screen Reader. And for this interview, my colleague David Redmond is going to speak with Quentin. So over to you, David.
Thanks a million. Quentin, how are things, first of all?
Hello, everybody. Thank you, David. Thank you, everybody. Can you hear me okay?
We can hear you loud and clear. Loud and clear.
Oh, lovely.
It must be said,
So
you're in Australia, are you?
I am in Australia. So I was looking forward to some good tips I could use with astronomy, because it's nice and dark out there. It's 1 a.m. So
I was going to say it's very late.
It is a bit late, yes. Yes, it is. It is. But no, it's good to be here.
Well, listen, thank you so much for taking the time out of your nighttime now, I guess, to join us. It's really much appreciated. So let's start, I guess, with NVDA, NV Access. Tell us, I suppose, a little bit about the background to the organization. Some of our listeners, I'm sure, will be well familiar with NVDA. They might even be users. But for those who aren't, what is NVDA? And tell us a little bit about its history, I guess.
Yeah, sure. So Michael Curran started in 2006 to essentially, at the time, just see how far he could get with developing a screen reader. It wasn't something that was well documented how to do at the time. So it was initially partly an experiment, partly it was also because of the prohibitive cost of traditional screen readers. He wanted to try and make something that was free and open source. And so I guess that is something that has influenced the whole organization from the beginning, because after Mick and Jamie got together on the project, 2006, in 2007 they formed NV Access. So as a charity, a registered charity and a not-for-profit here in Australia, with the express intention of forming something that would then ensure the longevity of the project, rather than just making it a for-profit, here is a product, you as an end user pay for it. So it's quite a different model in that respect. And that actually also goes to the question that we often get asked, well, how do you make it free? And you know, what are the chances of you being bought out and the product axed? So we make it free we work with companies like Microsoft, Google, Mozilla, Amazon, Adobe, and we give them our expertise and help them to ensure their products are as accessible as possible, and they help keep us funded. And we also sell training material, telephone support, and as a charity we take donations. So that's, I guess, in large part the difference with us. The similar things that probably the majority of your listeners will be familiar with as a screen reader, NVDA works only on PC, and it is a screen reader that works in broad sense, like many others, like VoiceOver on the Mac, like JAWS, like Window like TalkBack. So it will read everything that's going on the computer for you as you navigate around normally, do things normally, read email, read the web, type documents. You can also give it commands, obviously, to do specific things. And we've been going for over 15 years now, so quite exciting.
And how big is NV Access as an organization now? Like, I'm sure, certainly very humble beginnings, but the organization now, is it beginning to grow?
It is beginning to grow, and we now have, we still have enough staff to count on one hand. There's 5 of us.
Okay,
now.
still very small, but you're making big impacts with that, though.
Still quite small, yes. Yeah, we are, and part of the reason for that, and actually, if you look at the the what's new for our latest release that just came out last week, the main point that we made there was a lot of that was contributed by the community. So one of the great things, even though we only have a few of us on staff, we have a really big community behind us who help contribute code, bug fixes, bugs themselves, all of that sort of things that go to making the product what it is. So
it's crazy to think, right? Because you guys have 5 staff, but I'm looking at stats here. In the most recent WebAIM screen reader survey, you have 41.6% of the market. That makes you the biggest screen reader in Europe now, even bigger than JAWS. That's a massive achievement with just 5 people on staff. Do you see that growing and continuing in that direction as you go?
Absolutely, and yeah, it's definitely a huge achievement that we're really proud of, and obviously something that presents challenges and opportunities moving forward. And yes, that may well mean that we need to grow a little bit more. Certainly, it's I think come about for a number of reasons. I think partly obviously the free aspect of it, and perhaps also I think perhaps greater computer literacy, internet literacy around the world. One of the big reasons that we were formed as we are and why it's so important to us to make sure that NVDA is free is not just because for many people, yep, it's free, that's great, save a few bucks, a lot of bucks,
yeah, a lot of bucks.
or euros or pounds or any currency. But for some of us, that's what it is. We can save money and that's great. For a lot of people, though, they would never have had the ability to pay for a $1,000 screen reader in the first place. So I think we've always had a big population of users in countries like India who perhaps aren't as well represented in some of those surveys like WebAIM. So perhaps as the internet literacy and usage grows in some of those countries, that might also just mean that the users that are already there are being better represented. And yeah, we've definitely seen a lot of uptake in government and corporate use with things like being open source. A lot of countries now mandate the use of open source and say, no, you need to use at least a certain percentage of that.
So for those who don't know, what does it mean when you say that the product is open source? What does that actually mean in practice for those who don't understand open source, let's say?
Yeah, absolutely. So what that means is essentially that the source code for NVDA or for any open source project is there on the web. You can download it, and if you've got the tools, you can compile it. You can build NVDA yourself. What that means for us is particularly that people can help contribute code to it, because all the code's there. You can read it. You can, if you know what you're reading, you can help contribute to it. You can pick up things that need fixing or could be improved, or how to add things. What it doesn't mean is probably also important to point out, because one of the early concerns people had with open source was, well, hang on, if anyone can download it and edit it, then how do I know what I'm getting is safe? And the reason, or the answer to that is basically, as long as you're downloading it from us, from nvaccess.org, then you know that what you are downloading has been compiled and checked, and largely, but obviously, as I said, not entirely written by us, but certainly everything has been checked by us. So we do stand by it and guarantee that certainly it's not dangerous. We don't guarantee it doesn't have any bugs. I don't think any software would claim that.
Sure.
And we have a GitHub page with a large list of bugs that will testify that it's not bug free. But we do what we can. We do our best, certainly, and it's definitely always improving.
And in your, I suppose, day-to-day, you train people with the product, I'm sure, and you're constantly talking to users of the product. Do they compare you now, as you've grown, to the bigger screen readers like JAWS? Well, I suppose it's not a bigger screen reader anymore, but the kind of traditional screen readers. Do you get compared to the likes of JAWS on a regular basis by users of the product? And how do you feel about those comparisons?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, we do get compared to, well, primarily, yes, JAWS, all the time. And we're quite happy with being compared to that. I know sometimes we will get people who will say, oh, JAWS has this feature, therefore you need to do that. And I wouldn't automatically say that we'll jump and do that, because no, not necessarily. JAWS has some great features, that's true. And JAWS has some things that I think we have a slightly different philosophy. So JAWS probably includes a few more things that we might say, no, that can be an add-on. And that's fine either way. But the other thing is, sometimes people will say, oh, well, it's only free, so it's not like it's, a commercial program like JAWS. And I would vehemently disagree with that for the reasons that I gave before around the funding. Is just where the money comes from. That's got nothing to do with the quality of the product. And I would argue that we are, and certainly should be, as higher quality as any other program out there, and held to the same standards. So if something isn't working, I wouldn't want anyone to go, oh, well, that's just free, it's obviously not going to be as good. I want people to say, no, that's not working as well as it should, and let us know, please. We can't fix something we don't know about. So yeah, we definitely aspire to be, as good, if not better, than anything else out there.
So I suppose, just to switch gears slightly for a minute, other than talking to us at well past 1 a.m. in the morning, what other kind of stuff would you do on a day-to-day? What does your job look like as part of the team behind NVDA at this point?
Yep. So as the training and support manager, I'm probably less hands-on with the code itself than our developers. I actually do have a bit of a development background, so it, I think, really helps in that I can understand where they're coming from, and I can understand where users are coming from, and hopefully I can communicate to both groups. But my day-to-day, if you write to us, to our main address is info@nvaccess.org, you'll almost certainly get a reply from me. I do our social media. So if you engage with us on Twitter at NVAccess, or Facebook on the same handle, LinkedIn I'm getting better at, then you'll get me as well. I also write our training material, so you can purchase training material from us the basic training for NVDA is our flagship module. It walks you through, despite the basic in the name, it walks you through everything from getting started through to quite advanced concepts, configuration profiles, object navigation, and so on. And so I write that and maintain it. At the moment, I'm working through the Microsoft Word module that we've written and just updating that for the latest changes in NVDA, the latest changes in Word, and so on. And also our certification program. So we have the NVDA Certified Expert program, which is an online exam that you can sit, and at the end it's free for anyone to sit, so anyone can go out there and sit it. If you choose to, if you pass, if you choose to, you can purchase the certification, which gets you a spiffy little certificate and listing on our page as a certified expert. So between all of those things and just the other general things that come up, yeah, I tend to stay pretty busy.
Indeed. So I'll hand over to our other panelists in just a minute. But before we do you want to tell us, you mentioned that there was a recent NVDA update. Do you want to tell us maybe about some of the things that have been added to the product now and maybe some of the stuff coming down the road?
Absolutely. So a couple of the things that we've had come in recently was in 2022.3, we've had a lot of improvements to the command prompt, PowerShell, Windows subsystem for Linux, terminal sort of things, which came largely as a project from the Google Summer of Code. So we try and engage with the wider community as well and give back a little there. And the Google Summer of Code is basically a program that Google put up where they try and link up-and-coming developers with companies working on open source projects, not just accessibility, but anything. And in 2019, we had a young, I can't remember where he's from. He's from America somewhere. Bill Dengler joined us, and he worked on a lot of that code for improving the command line and PowerShell and things like that. So that's something new in NVDA that's just come down the line now. We've got a few of those little things that perhaps aren't huge, but will make a bit of a difference day to day. So things like an option to scroll the braille display without interrupting speech. Previously, if you had a line that was too long for the display, you couldn't scroll it without it stopping talking, and now you can. Adobe Reader and Adobe Acrobat 64 no longer crashes, which is always good.
That's
PDFs
always good,
can be
yeah.
Tricky enough. PDFs can be tricky enough as it is. So yes, that is one of those fixes. And a couple of things with eSpeak as well. So I know that's one of those ones that a lot of users either really love or really hate. If you happen to use eSpeak at rate 100, we've made a slight change to fix something else that a couple of users have pointed out. So you might notice a slight difference there, but it will work pretty much the same. We've had a few security updates recently, so probably more updates this year than we normally would. We normally have about 4 main releases a year, but this year we've had a couple of security ones for, I would say, obscure, but potential security issues, and we do take those seriously. So
Sure.
we've put out patches to address those just in case. So we would encourage everyone to update to the latest version, which is 2022.3. But we actually have a beta already of 2022.4, which came out today. So that is in the pipeline.
And what does that include, may I ask? Just the obviously, we'll just run through the basics of that because it's not fully out yet. It's not out of beta yet. But is there anything exciting in 2022.4?
There's an exciting one for me in 2022.4. I've basically commandeered an entire section of the user guide and made a quick start guide, which is similar to what you might picture from that. Basically, it's a getting started guide to NVDA. So we've got the user guide, which comes with the program, which has traditionally been more of a, I know what object navigation is, but I can't remember the command to move to the next object, and that would show you. But object navigation has always been a really good one that you're best to learn from something like the training material. But the Quick Start Guide will walk you more through that basic stuff. How do I start NVDA? How do I get it to start talking? How do I get it to stop talking? And things like that. So it's, yeah, that's an exciting one for me. And at the moment, I'm just hoping that I haven't put too much work on all of our wonderful translators, because I'm sure they all hate me just about now. But it will be something that I think a lot of users will appreciate, and particularly new users coming to NVDA. And actually, just on that, not specifically related to this release, but we do have, since we've been comparing a little bit of NVDA and JAWS today, we do have a guide for switching from JAWS to NVDA. So anyone out there who is interested in not necessarily even switching full time, but just dipping a toe in the water and trying it, we do have a guide out there for you. So yes, that is there. But a couple of other things that are coming up. There's a few new commands that we've included. We have also updated eSpeak and LibLouis that controls the Braille. And there's lots of new Braille tables and languages in there. And for those who perhaps don't use Braille but has a little bit of sight, NVDA is now more DPI aware with multiple monitors, so it'll improve things like visual highlight and mouse echo and touch and things like that. So that's all coming in 2022.4.
Fantastic. That's awesome. So I suppose before we go any further, what I'll do is I'll just ask any of the rest of our panelists if they have any questions. And yeah, have we anything coming in from people at home maybe?
Hello, David. While we're waiting there for some of the guys to come in with questions, I was just wondering, could I ask Quentin there, the OCR, can NVDA do OCR documents? Can it recognize documents, or how is that done?
Yep, good question. So NVDA does use an OCR function that actually comes with Windows, and we can OCR basically anything that's on the screen or anything that that you can pull up on the computer. So that works well. You can't OCR directly from a hard copy document with a scanner.
Right.
Through that OCR, although most if you've got a hard copy scanner, you'll almost certainly have some kind of software with it to pull that document in. And I appreciate that they do vary in their accessibility, shall we say. So yeah, we are looking, actually, I have got a project this year or next year to look at OCR and how we can improve that.
Yeah, brilliant. I was more thinking like if you get, sometimes you get those scanned PDFs sent to you via email. They can be OCR though, as far as I know, with NVDA. Is that correct?
That's right. You can OCR those with NVDA. So you just open it, and NVDA R is the command, and it will say recognizing, done, and then you can just read it with the normal commands.
Brilliant. Sounds easy. Great. Thanks, Quentin.
You're welcome.
JJP here. I have just a question in relation to NVDA use in employment. So one of the things I've come to notice over the last few years is that there's more and more people who are registered with the NCBI and in employment who are now moving over towards using NVDA, and that's sometimes when they're given the opportunity to avail of funding for a commercial screen reader. So just wondering, do you feel that we are, say, moving now toward this perception that NVDA is actually a very suitable screen reader for someone who wants it installed in their work PC?
Absolutely, and we have had an increasing number of queries from either people using it for work or companies looking to roll it out to their staff, either for, well, actually companies looking to roll it out to their staff either for employees who are end users or for testing as well. But either way, it's still free to use for anybody, even in a commercial environment, and we have a page on the website for corporate and government users which answers a lot of the questions that we do get in relation to things like data collection and privacy and the license agreement and things like that the companies need. But yeah, in terms of use in employment, it's absolutely right up there. I think perhaps 5 or 7, probably 7 years ago when I started, there was a criticism that it was, particularly with, say, Excel and a lot of advanced Office things, it was not the same level as JAWS, but certainly within a couple of years that had just about disappeared. And I'd say, yeah, for most things, it is quite comparable. I'm sure, having said that, somebody listening in is going, oh, but it doesn't do this as well. But there's probably also someone else going, but it does this better.
Yeah,
so
true.
yeah.
It certainly seems to have taken huge strides, Quentin. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I have a quick question, Quentin. Windows 11 and NVDA has this changeover from Windows 10 to Windows 11, has that been fairly seamless, or did you come across many issues that had to be ironed back out to kind of get the next version ready for Windows 11?
To be honest, most of the issues that we've encountered with Windows 11 are issues with Windows 11 itself rather than screen reader issues. But even then, they've fixed a lot of the things in the couple of updates since Windows 11 first came out. So NVDA worked with Windows 11 from day one, or from before day one when it was originally in the insider builds. And yeah, we're definitely, if you look through the what's new, then yeah, definitely there are some things in Windows 11, blah blah blah. But no, look for most, and it's probably a good question too, because a lot of users are asking, well, I'm using Windows 10, should I upgrade to Windows 11?
Particularly for screen reader users, we would find that question coming in. Yeah,
absolutely, and it's one where you're often not best to be a really early adopter and jump straight in, because you will hit a lot more bugs than some other users. But no, look, I've been using it, and I think 3 out of 5 of us are using it day to day, and it works quite well.
Excellent.
Good to hear. So I suppose if there are no other questions, Quentin, before we do let you go back to bed or to bed, what we'll ask is just for those who do want to download NVDA, how can they do so?
Yeah, so you can download NVDA. You can also find out more information and look at the training material and all those other things that we've got from nvaccess.org.
nvaccess.org. Quentin, thank you so much for joining us. Really, really much appreciated. And it's fascinating just how much you've built and the success that you've had with such a small team as well. So credit to all of you. Keep it up, and hopefully we'll chat again in a few months.
Thank you so much. And thank you everyone for listening in, and thanks for having me. And I look forward to coming back.
Fantastic. Thanks, Quentin. It's back over to you, Daniel.
Thanks very much, David. That was a most interesting discussion with Quentin there on the rise of popularity of NVDA. You made a good point there. It's the most popular across Europe now, David, yours? You come out with an interesting
statistic. It's 41.6% in Europe versus 40.2% for JAWS, which is a small gap, but it's still a gap, and who knows if that will keep going in that direction.
Wow, that is very interesting. I would not have thought that. Okay, so thank you very much, guys, for all of that. I want to take this time to remind you of our support lines and how you can get in contact with NCBI Technology Support. Our phone number is 1-800-911-110, or you can drop us an email to labs@ncbi.ie. For general support, you can contact us on 1-800-911-250, or you can drop an email to info@ncbi.ie. Now, before we wrap up the show, we do have a small little bit of tech news that I might swing back to David there about. Just, you have some tech news listed for us, David?
Sure, yeah. So just a little bit of tech news this week. We won't keep people long, but there is a new Amazon Echo Dot out, folks. Can you believe it? So there's some interesting stuff with this new Echo Dot. It is the first time the Echo Dot has received an update without the actual bigger Echo getting an update. So traditionally, there was always the Echo Dot, which retailed for $49.99, and there was the standard Echo for $89.99. But now there is an Echo Dot 5th generation, but there is no Echo 5th generation. So that will lead people to ask, well, what's new in the Echo Dot that we're not getting in the bigger Echo just yet? Well, it is a new, it can basically now act as a mesh Wi-Fi extender. If you have an Eero product, which is basically Amazon's router feature, which some people might, but a lot of people don't yet. A lot just use the box given to them by their internet service provider. But if you've gone down the road of getting an Eero device, then the new Amazon Echo will enable you to use it as a mesh extender. And for those of you who don't, this will obviously mean that there will be a reduction in cost perhaps on the new on the older Echo Dot 4th generation. So those cheap smart speakers, they're getting even cheaper.
So David, good for those who are working out in the shed. They want to extend their broadband. Extend the Wi-Fi. Yeah, that's it. Also has a temperature sensor built in. So I suppose they said something about more helpful for our routines. If your temperature goes down in the house, the heating will come on or go off or whatever.
Indeed, yeah. So this is a feature that they've brought down from the older products. So traditionally, the bigger Echo had the temperature sensor. I've used it for some routines with my own one at home. I have the 4th generation of the standard one. And yes, so you can use the temperature sensor for things like routines, as you say. So maybe you want to use it to turn on the heating if it drops below a certain amount, or maybe you want to turn on a smart plug connected to a heater, then that gives you an option to do so, which is really cool.
Yeah, and I suppose there's a couple of other products. There's Kindle Scribe. It's a Kindle that you can write on. There's a couple of new Fire TVs that have come out. They also announced Fire TV will be coming to the Echo shows, the Echo Show 15. It'll be like having a little TV in your bedroom. Fire TV will be, I presume, obviously accessible with Alexa then, or even more accessible with Alexa, I should say. It's already accessible. But if it's on an Echo show, it's going to be really good, I think.
Excellent.
Yeah, I think they were the most interesting pieces. There was a couple of products by Ring as well, the doorbell cameras and doorbells and stuff. But I think the most interesting one was the Dot and the Fire TV products. And it'll be good for people to have a browse over the next couple of days, because
actually
there is a sale, isn't it?
Yeah,
sale for 2 days. 2 days long, I think. So you have to be quick.
Tomorrow. Today and
Is
tomorrow.
it today or tomorrow and the day after? I think it's today and tomorrow, is it?
Yeah, it's
okay.
today and tomorrow. I better get the Christmas shopping done.
Exactly.
I'm late this year, folks. I'm late.
For the well clued in of us out there, I think many of us were logging on at 12:05 last night just to try and get make sure you're getting the deals before the sold out. So it kicked off at midnight, literally a minute past midnight last night, and it'll continue until midnight tomorrow night.
So were you up late yourself?
I wouldn't call a minute past 12 late.
Oh, okay. Fair enough. I think that's a yes. That's a yes.
On a school night,
shopaholic, Daniel.
On a school night, it's late.
Yeah.
So that's everything in the world of Amazon for this week's tech news. So the sale is on. There's a few new products. Thanks very much, guys, for informing us about those. And for anyone listening in live, well, you still have about a day and a half to get on and see what's on offer. And for those listening in later, well, depends on what time you're listening at, but hopefully you will get in before that deadline tomorrow, Wednesday at 5 to 12. Okay, so that is pretty much everything for today's show. So coming up on the 25th of October, which is our next show, we will be having a Braille special to mark Braille Week. And in future episodes then, we will be looking at JAWS and ZoomText 2023 updates with Matt and Vice President of Software and Corporate Business Development in Vispero. And Sarah Hellinger will be also along in a future show. She's Apple's Senior Director of Global Accessibility Policy and Initiatives. But don't forget, our next show for Braille Special is on the 25th of October next, and we hope to see you then. And our technology newsletter, which goes out every week, you can sign up for that on our website. That's www.ncbi.ie. Or if you'd like to drop an email to labs@ncbi.ie, we can add you to that mailing list. So that's pretty much everything for today from our guests to our panelists. We'd like to thank you for listening, and we look forward to meeting you again on the 25th of October. Thank you very much.
Thanks for listening to the Talking Technology podcast with NCBI Labs. If you would like to support our show, you can visit donate.ncbi.ie. The NCBI Labs Talking Technology podcast is proudly sponsored by IA Labs, the market leader in the provision of digital accessibility services.